Welcome to the Well-Oiled Canine Podcast, where your dog's health is our top priority. I'm Dana Brigman, a canine nutritionist and certified holistic pet health coach, specializing in aromatherapy, homeopathy, and herbs. Join me on a mission to help your dog eat better, feel better, and live longer. Now let's dive into a world of natural pet care and discover the secrets to a happier, healthier pup. Visit me at welloiledcanine.com. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it may be when you're listening. I'm Dana Brigman of the Well-Oiled Canine and have Angela Keith of 456 Canine Coaching with me. And today we're going to be talking about an emergency go bag for your dog. I think we've all been reminded this weekend of how fast things can happen with weather, but it could also be an emergency where grandma's sick and everybody's got to get in the car and go. So we just wanted to talk about some of the things that we keep in our emergency go bags and that you should travel with when the time comes. So Angela, welcome. Take a moment, introduce yourself and your business, and then we'll get into this topic.
Hey everyone, glad you're here. Angela Keith, as Dana said, I'm 456. Canine Coach is my short tag. And I'm up in Wilmington, just north of Dana. And we're excited to have this little collaborative podcast for you guys. Share our thoughts, a little bit of a brain dump for us since we like to get together and rant on things sometimes.
Usually over food.
Yes. Food always fuels the thinking tank.
Exactly. So, Angela, I think let's talk about this from 2 points of view. One, from the pet parent who has to get stuff together for their dog.
Yep.
And then maybe from your point of view as a trainer who runs a boarding center and what you may have to do should you have to evacuate and you've got people's dogs there and they're maybe out of the country, right?
Yeah, sure.
Possibility. So let's start with the pet parent. What's in your go bag for Gouda?
Since she doesn't normally wear collar and tags and stuff, that's always handy. Because I feel like a lot of us don't keep tags and stuff on our dogs.
I don't either. And I was traveling with Huey this weekend. The drive was 6.5 hours and it wound up being 9.
Oh gosh.
Put a collar on him that's embroidered with name and phone number just in case.
Yep. Vaccine records. Whether it's printed, mostly I just have mine saved on my phone just so I can always pull that up in an emergency. Whether even if it's you've got to go into a shelter, they might want proof of what vaccines your dogs have, or if some freak accident happens while you're just traveling on vacation or something, right, you're gonna need that to stay out of trouble potentially.
Yeah, and it's easy enough to keep in your contacts your vet's names, their address, all that kind of stuff. And then an album of photos on your phone that would have your most recent records.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Let's see. Well, since we're on a lot of medications right now, she has her own little pill box because she's unfortunately we're having to regulate blood pressure and things like that at this age for her. So I make sure that stuff's ready to go. Just like we would for ourselves. You make sure you have your medication and, a clean pair of clothes and a toothbrush. She's got medication and a collar and a leash, and those are the most important things probably. But I also want to make sure she's got something that's familiar to her if are going to be in a situation like a shelter in place.
Yeah.
That's very stressful for a dog, just like an animal shelter. Like the stress levels are high, the dog's pheromones are, telling each other, I'm stressed, this is scary. So having something familiar like a small bed or even a blanket or something that's theirs. Because
Mhm.
in most of those shelters, the animals are separate from the people. The animals are housed in a separate section of that makeshift shelter.
Right. Which is an important reminder that crate training matters.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. I saw a post about it this weekend, and it reminded me I to tell clients and people, that we needed to do this because you may not be in the same exact space with your dog, and they are not going to let that dog just roam freely.
Yep.
Even if your dog has not been crated in many years, it's important to sort of do dry runs of even at home, just to keep them comfortable in their crate from time to time as practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen a few posts from shelter workers. I'm still in a big Red Cross network from when I used to volunteer several years ago, and I've seen a couple posts just where people are really frustrated that the animals are coming in are in such distress that we're creating all this unnecessary stress for them because they have to be separated and crated from their owners.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard on the dogs. It makes it hard on the pet parents that have to be separated. And it makes it really hard on the shelter staff. They're trying to keep everybody safe.
Right. And it just kind of going back to the identification for a minute. I know sometimes we're worried about true separation and collars and that sort of thing. So um, Sharpie, write the phone number on the belly of the dog,
Yep.
that they think it's you. I see where they do that with horses. I know I heard some folks in um, the eastern mountains of North Carolina, or sorry, the western mountains of North Carolina and the eastern mountains of Tennessee, who were not expecting Hurricane Helene to make it that far. And all this flooding was occurring, and they had to just let their horses go. They just
Yeah.
the fence and let them out to try and get to higher ground because they couldn't transport them. And
Yeah.
um,
And
there's
the animals have the instinct to do that too.
do that,
But
right?
and as long as you have ID on them, you can go find them.
Even a Sharpie with your name and phone number written on the belly of that animal can be a game changer to get them back to you.
Yeah. And if you're in a situation like you are in somewhere like Asheville or Boone, I've even heard law enforcement say take a Sharpie and write your own identification information on an arm or a leg.
Yeah, I saw that this weekend too, and that's scary as all get out.
Yes, very much so. I think I thought it was, I mean, the first time I saw it, I thought, oh, well, that's kind of funny because it came from a governor in Florida that said, hey, we've asked you to evacuate. If you choose not to go, please put your name and date of birth on your arm so we can identify you later. And I thought, wow, that's kind of harsh.
No, I read a very similar one from one of the sheriffs in the area, and he said, "We've done all we can do. If
Yeah.
you're going to stay home, get a Sharpie, name, birthday, phone number, whatever.
Yeah.
When we find you, we know who to call." Yeah, scary.
Scary stuff.
Mhm.
That's living on the coast. You and I are, well, you haven't been on the coast too long. I've
Almost a little over 5 years now.
I've been here since Floyd. So Floyd was my first big hurricane, and I was in college in Greenville, and that was really scary.
I moved here in July of 2019. And in September, I think it was September of 2019, Michael rolled through.
Yeah.
And so they wanted all of us to evacuate. And my neighbor said, "We're not going anywhere." And I said, "Okay, fine, I'm going to stay." Yeah. And I walked outside one night and the whole street was gone. Now that is some freaky stuff when you're like here all by yourself.
Yep.
My God, you told me you were, and they're like, "We thought you left." I'm like, "Have you got my phone number?" Say, "We're leaving."
And sadly, you know what? A lot of people don't leave because of their animals,
Mhm.
because either they don't know that there's access to animal friendly shelters, or unfortunately they have dogs or cats that they know aren't going to do well in a situation like that, and so they choose to stay home instead of go.
Yeah, I would go somewhere, even if it's just higher, safer ground and we stayed in the car for a little.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
problem sometimes though is we even have dogs that are incompatible and can't be in the same car.
yes,
I see those clients who are living the lifestyle of crate and rotate because two dogs in their home are incompatible. What do you do then if you can't get them in the car? And that is another important reason that all dogs are crate trained, because at
yep,
least get them, you know, it's depending on the size of the car and size of the dog, you can get at least one of them in, cover it, do some things to try and create some level of separation and get the heck out of Dodge.
yep. And muzzle training, being able to tether an animal, that you can muzzle them and tether them in separate areas, especially if you're going to stay with a family member or something, but they might not have your setup.
That's
Make
right.
sure you have safety measures in place, like tethering and muzzle training and things like that.
Exactly. And just an important note about that muzzle, it needs to be a good basket muzzle, not those little temporary nylon wraps that you would use for a quick vet visit or an injection, right? Medical thing.
Yeah.
But when we get a good quality basket muzzle, that dog can breathe. They can wear it all day long,
Yep.
get some treats through there. They make some, they can't necessarily eat a full meal, but you can at least get some substances in them. And
I've seen the dogs with longer snouts can eat through a muzzle.
that
The dogs that have the longer pointy snouts, I've seen be able to eat through the muzzle, but like Gouda with her smushy face, no.
have a little hole in the middle that you could push things through.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a good quality basketball. And listen, there is no shame in muzzle training your dog. It's a safety thing, it's a liability thing, and it may be the thing that saves their life in a moment like this.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, like this just occurred to me now, but it's muzzle training isn't just for the dog that might bite somebody. It can also help out the dog that could be bitten by another dog and would overreact. So if you're in a situation where a bunch of people are sheltering in place and another animal does try to come at your dog, you don't want your dog to react back poorly and cause a bite. So if everybody's muzzle trained, even those, friendly, happy go lucky dogs, then everyone is safe. Because dogs make bad decisions when they're stressed out, even the best of them.
And dogs that we would sort of label as reactive, that may not be aggressive, or a fearful dog, a dog
Yeah,
under stress, under fear, may do very unpredictable things.
absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Um, we hit medical supplies and health, we muzzles. Let's talk a little bit about how we get food where we're going.
Hmm. Especially if you're not a kibble eater.
Right. So I had somebody asked me about that on my Facebook group this weekend that says, look, we feed fresh. And what do we do in an emergency? And so my answer was sort of multifaceted, because fresh means different things to different people. For some, it's the true prey model where they're throwing organ and turkey necks and chicken legs and all sorts of stuff in the bowl, and that's the dog's meal. Well, you're not going to take that with you, right? I mean, you're just not going to have access to that in most cases, especially if you land in a shelter, or you may not have access to it for a few days, even if you wind up at grandma's house.
Yep.
You can probably pull a pack or two out of the freezer to go with you, but you're not going to have sort of long-term preparation. So what I said was keep some sort of dehydrated base mix. So the Volhard diet is a dehydrated base mix to which we add fresh protein. And that could be a can of sardines, can of mackerel. We don't love cans of tuna, but they would work in an emergency until you can get somewhere and get some some hands-on, some ground beef or whatever. But you may not even have that option. So perhaps even keeping something like carnivore on hand, which is an air-dried complete meal, right? The thing about that is at some point that bag will expire, even if you're not feeding it every day.
Yeah.
And so that may just be a cost of doing business, so to speak, to keep it on hand. But it could be something that you use through, as it's going to reach its expiration date, that you maybe just add it as a topper or use it as a treat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And get that bag expired and out of the way, and then grab another one for the next year.
Yep.
So what other things come to mind?
Let's see. Emergency contacts for animals. If something happens to you, make sure that someone knows, because some people, my brother comes to mind when I think of this. Actually, he has a dog that's very specific on who can handle him. So if something were to happen to my brother, it's going to have to be one of like 3 people that would be able to go get his dog.
Mm-hmm.
His dog has some major, fear issues and stuff. And so if I had a dog like that, I would want to make sure, as well as having my contact information, that there's emergency contact information for the pet that may be different than my emergency contact information, especially if you have those challenging dogs.
You and Maria are mine. Any issues? He's 197 years old now, and somebody that understands that and understands.
Yep. Poppy would probably just hop in the car with anybody and say, okay, where are we going?
Poppy's like, oh, Scott, I'm good. Feed me whatever you want. I don't care.
Yeah, I always think about that. It's kind of a joke between myself and my friends, but there's a list of people who would take in Gouda if something happened to me, and there's a few people that have had arguments about where they're placed on that list.
I understand totally. Okay. Other things that I would say is make sure in your go bag are some poop bags,
Poop bags, yes. All
paper
the
towels, cleaning wipes, garbage bags that you can put all that stuff in as you're driving down the road and get to the next stop to throw it away. And probably some towels.
yes.
You can wipe them off if you're muddy or in the rain, if you made a pit stop. But like we stopped, it was so rainy in Virginia this weekend. Every time I took Huey out, he's like, it's raining and I don't want to go. So we struggled with that. But he would get soaking wet, and then he was cold, and you have to dry him off and bring him back. So keep some fresh towels in your bag as well.
Yeah, and lots of water for humans and dogs, but especially in a situation like a hurricane, because drinking water could potentially be hard to find at some point.
Right.
Clean drinking water. And if they get dehydrated and start feeling bad, then again, they get stressed out, and we've added some unnecessary stress to the situation.
Remember, water bottles are actually going to expire. So kind of keep a date on your go bag for all those things. And remember, you need to replace them periodically.
Yep. And extra leashes. I just thought of that. Extra leashes in the go bag. Yep. Or like long lines or something.
Absolutely.
For those dogs that don't like to potty on leash.
I had a female Great Dane that even when we went to visit family and I had her on a leash, and they lived on a very busy street, right? And so they had no fence early on. They did finally get a fence, but she would not go on a leash. She would sometimes hold it a full day or two before she got back home. She's like, I am not doing it. But
yeah.
She became trustworthy enough that I could just unclip it long enough to let her have her private moment.
Yep.
Go from there. But if you're in a unknown area, you might not be able to do that.
Yeah. Even if you've just parked at a rest stop to take a couple hours nap, like you have to have some type of backup.
Other things that I would say to keep with you is a flashlight.
Yep.
right? We covered the emergency contacts. One important thing I think is to stay calm, as calm as you can, because your dog is going to read your energy and be a little more freaked out if you are. And I know these would be stressful moments. These emergency things are stressful all the time. So in that regard, I would be like wanting to have, and I have a first aid kit that travels in my car all the time. So I have some homeopathic remedies and I have some essential oils that are in there all the time. And so some of them can be very calming and supportive for these kinds of things. And then you want, like digest comes to mind, because if your dog is stressed, his belly's going to be upset, he may run into diarrhea.
Yeah.
That sucks in the car.
Maybe a face mask.
You want to get those things settled down and keeping. So homeopathy doesn't expire. Essential oils do not expire. They make great sense to keep in an emergency first aid kit that travels with you.
Yep, definitely.
All right, what else comes to mind? Anything? I think that's all that I had currently on my blog. You've given me a couple things that I'm going to add to it, but we'll post the link to that as well, so future reference. But let's look a little bit to your, I'm sorry, were you going to add something?
Oh, I was just gonna think it was something that you and I talked about. It's been a year or so ago, but I had a faulty AC unit and I was worried about a house fire one day, and you gave me a great idea because I had, training dogs, and for sure not all of these dogs can be together.
Okay.
Is putting things out. If you just have to get dogs out of the house, putting places around the yard and stuff where you can tether dogs, making sure you have a way to get everybody out of the house, but safely and not just running amok.
And a little bit at distance from each other.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Remember that tip that we shared, but so when I had my kennel building, we had a big fenced in area that was the poles were probably 8 feet apart, right? And so we did like 3-foot tethers and then every other one, or 4-foot tethers and then every other pole.
Yeah.
And then so corners, center, all around, so that they were tethered to something that wasn't moving.
Yep.
And then they still couldn't reach each other. They may not like each other, but they couldn't get
to each other.
And then one day I was like, what happens if it's the kennel building that's on fire? That's way too close to the building, right? So I had acreage, and what we did was we went out to the big trees and actually put boat cleats in the trees that were never going to come out, couldn't be pulled out. When you use a tether, you need to make sure it is appropriately weighted, meaning the dog, if you've got a 125-pound Great Dane, that he can't pull that thing out of the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I have slip leads on trees around my house now.
Yeah. So that's what we did. And so we knew where all of those were. And that if we had to run a dog, we knew exactly where we were going and get them away as much as we could from, thank God we never had to do that. But we practiced as if we did. We ran fire drills with my staff.
Yeah.
So as a kennel, have 12, 15 dogs at a time?
Over holidays, yeah, it gets pretty full.
So talk to people about sort of these plans. What would you do if there was a true evacuation?
Well, I always have emergency contact information. And if there is something like a storm coming, I mean, typically we have 3 to 7 days notice on a hurricane or something like that coming through. And I will be on the phone with everybody's owners going, are you staying? Are you leaving? Can you take back the dog if, because sometimes my dogs are just here for training and the owners are still in town. And so that's an easy one. They can just go back home and either stay with their families or evacuate with their families. But yeah, there are definitely times where I have a dog and the owners are traveling. And so I always have them leave me a contact person, somebody local that can help if I do have to evacuate. So I want to try to get as many dogs as possible back to, someone else, because for obvious reasons, can't travel with 10 dogs.
Right. It's not.
Yeah. But, I do have, there's always crates in my truck. So anyone's dog that's not my financial responsibility rides in a crate. I have impact crates.
Yeah.
So I have at least 2 of those in the truck all the time. I can add more. I have ways to tether dogs in my truck.
Right.
I think I've actually had 6 dogs in my truck at one time, and safely too. Nobody was in anybody's space. I wouldn't put 2 aggressive dogs side by side, but I can definitely do it if I had to get a number of dogs in the truck and head out. But yeah, I always sort of have a plan in the back of my mind. If something happens, I know a storm's coming. Who can I send home? Who has to be with me? And then I know I can go places like my mother's house. She has the setup that I can bring multiple dogs there and even keep them separate if needed.
Right.
And we keep some extra crates there and stuff too.
Just a few weeks ago, even though you and I are less than 2 hours away from each other, the storm that rolled through your area was far more significant than it was here.
Yeah. Yep.
We can cross-reference that way as well. But I sometimes worry that new trainers, new pet sitters have not really considered all of these things.
Thought about what would happen. Yeah.
And so I hope that they'll get some nuggets of information from this as well.
Yeah. Just always know that you've got somebody at high ground. If you have pets, even if it's someone that you're really not that acquainted with, if there's a storm coming, see if you can find refuge somewhere. It's safer than being stuck at home with your pets in an emergency situation happening, like what happened at Carolina Beach. They were not expecting that much rain at all.
And it took days for the water to recede.
Yes. Well, and Southport's still pretty much cut off. There's only one way in and out of Southport now.
Yeah, there was a big storm. I still had my kennel building. And I remember talking to a couple of trainers that I knew in Florida that were trying to evacuate north. And I said, come here. We have crates. I have room. Just
Yep.
none of them did. But we as the trainer community and dog loving community need to do that for each.
Yeah. I mean, I've reached out to people in the mountains and said, hey, I've got the space. Even if you just need me to keep dogs while you're doing cleanup, like send them my way. I will help out. I've got the space. I've got the setup.
And the thing about that is your skills and mine, we can help with those really difficult dogs when we need
Yeah, definitely
manage that. So
yep.
So don't be afraid if you're a trainer or boarder or whatever out there and you're like, I'm struggling, I'm scared, I don't know what. Reach out to us, even if you don't know us.
Yeah. Ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's better than risking your lives and your pets' lives.
Right. Absolutely.
Yep.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add?
Let's see. We went over challenging dogs, we went over crate training. I think that's all that's coming to mind.
But if anybody has questions or past experiences of your own that you found worked really well, or things that you're like, don't do what I did. We would love to hear your feedback and maybe add that to pass along to the other folks as well. And then certainly if you have questions on any topic, anything you want us to cover, we're happy to hear from you about your questions and your needs and goals and that sort of thing. This is just a timely topic because I think many people were caught by surprise this weekend.
Yep.
Yeah, I was surprised. We were in the mountains of Virginia at a speaking engagement at an animal conference. And the amount of rain we got, there was a little tiny bridge that crossed over a creek where we were staying. And the water was rushing so much you could not get across that bridge from either direction. So we were we weren't planning to go anywhere for the weekend, but if we had wanted to get out of the mountain, we could not. But by Sunday afternoon, when I needed to leave, it was at least passable.
Good.
So
Yeah, that storm was intense.
it was, and I'm stunned at how far inland the damage was.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of the worst damage that we've seen from hurricanes is what happened inland.
Mhm.
And I think part of that too is when you live in the mountains, you don't expect to have to be hurricane ready, right?
The flooding that took place is a surprise, because I think about the mountains and it's like uphill, right? It's how does this happen? I still can't wrap my brain around it, and I am just sad and devastated by all that has happened in the mountains of North Carolina.
Yeah. And I'll throw this out there too. It's something that I've been sort of spreading the word about locally. If you're local to me, Wilmington, any of the little tri-county area here, and you're willing and able to take in a foster dog from the mountains, from the storm that has to be transplanted somewhere else, I'm offering free help and services to anybody that takes in a dog that has to be moved out of the mountains from the shelters. So if you've ever thought about fostering anything like that, reach out. I can even, help with placement, make sure it's a dog that would be a good fit for your situation.
Yeah. And I even said in my group recently that this woman was asking about the food. What do I do? And I'm like, if you like, for example, if you're a Volhard feeder or not, I don't care, and you don't have access to food and we can drop ship some to you, we're gonna do that. So
Absolutely.
yeah. All right. Well, this is good. Anything else before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Hopefully we get some feedback, hopefully some people will share some situations, some real life situations they've been in that will help us kind of think outside of the box and troubleshoot.
Exactly.
Add to our list of
Because by the grace
resources.
of God, I've never actually had to do this.
I know.
I hope I don't, but there's nothing like somebody who's been through it sharing their experience.
Yeah, because we can sit and talk about what you should do all day long, but until you're in that situation, you really don't know.
Right. Exactly.
So yes, share your stories, good or bad, and help us be the most prepared that we can to share the information with everyone.
That's right. All right, friends. You can reach Angela at
456 number 4 number 5 number 6 K9 CANINE coach COACH at gmail.com.
Yep. And I'm Dana Brigman at the welloiledcanine.com. So welloiledcanine.com. And there's links there to my phone number, my email, and stuff. Hope to hear from you guys soon. Thanks for attending. Thank you, Angela.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us on the Well Oiled Canine podcast. I'm Dana Brigman, your canine nutritionist and certified holistic pet health coach. I hope you found today's episode valuable and inspiring for your journey towards better health for your dog. Don't forget to visit me at thewelloiledcanine.com and check out our members forum for lots of discussions, interactions, education that you won't find anywhere else. That's at members.welloiled.com.